And unfortunately, as we know from the 3rd of May, the state forces violated the ground rules by leading the radical elements in the valley to attack our villages, kill us, etc. But what to do? We were not in a position to prevent that kind of thing. That was the responsibility of the state government, and they, for whatever reasons, under their noses, this happened.
Hello and welcome back to BP Chongloy Talk Show. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Today's special guest is Dr. Seilen Haokip, spokesperson of the KNO National Organization. So welcome to the show. Let's start with the most important question. The Kukizo community are desperately waiting for an update regarding our demand for separate administration. So, could you please shed some light on what the progress has been in terms of dialogue with the government of India?
Okay. Thank you, PP. This is a very important topic. It is something that our entire people are keenly awaiting and engaged in. And of course, communities beyond ours also would be curious to know what is going on. The topic today, which you want to dwell on, is SOO, which means suspension of operations. Now, this was first signed in 2005 with the Indian Army and the two umbrella organizations, the United People's Front and the KNO National Organization. However, the state was not a part of that agreement, and therefore they were not obliged to go by the suspension of operations ground rules. Now, before I go on to the next part of SOO, I just want to state clearly, SOO, suspension of operations, refers strictly to ground rules. It's not political in nature, in other words. It is to do with how the security forces behave and how the SOO groups behave once they sign this agreement, essentially meaning there should not be no fighting, no firing. Is that clear? So, that being the case, one might wonder, why is SOO necessary between the government and the SOO groups? It is so that an atmosphere conducive for political dialogue, for an amicable settlement, a peaceful settlement may be in process. And that is very appropriate because our demands are constitutional. In other words, we are asking for our constitutional rights to be given. We are not a secessionist group. Okay. So, as I mentioned, the SOO signed with the army in 2005. The state government of Manipur was not a part of, so they were not obliged to comply with the rules. However, in 2008, a tripartite suspension of operation was signed among the Indian government, the state government, and the SOO groups. Now, for 8 years after 2008, somehow the talks didn't commence. And we found out later that there were forces behind which were opposed to government of India talking with us. In other words, it means they didn't want any political settlement for us. So they were opposing from the quiet, from the backgrounds, and they succeeded for 8 years. And to put things in context, at the time, the party in power was the Congress. Now, as we all know, the BJP came to power in 2014. And within 2 years of them being in power at the center, they commenced political dialogue with the SOO groups. However, as I mentioned before, for 8 years, they stopped the dialogue from commencing earlier. So 2016, after 2 years of BJP in power, talks actually started in which the government was, the center's representative chaired the meeting. He was known as the interlocutor at the time, and the state government sent its representative as well, or the state's interlocutor, who was a retired IPS officer by the name of Ibocha, but God bless his soul, he passed away during COVID. Now, for the next 3 years, after talks started in June of 2019, owing to COVID, for 3 years, nothing happened. Once COVID was put in place and it was no longer a threat, in 2021, the government resumed the talks. Tripartite meeting was held at Imphal at the Manipur Rifles, first MR, in which the center's representative, as I said, chaired the meeting. The state sent its special home secretary and a number of high officials from the police and security forces, etc. And the SO groups were there. So at that point, our political demand was set, and we were asking for an autonomous territorial council within the state of Manipur. And the debate that came about was whether it should be sixth schedule based or based on the existing proviso of Article 371C, which has been in place in the state of Manipur since 1972. But our people harbored grievances about Article 371C because they felt the government of Manipur was not allowing that provision to function. Be that as it may, the talks then continued, having signed the suspension of operations agreement. I'd like to just reiterate this point again. We have to distinguish between SOO and the tripartite political dialogue. SOO is ground rules, no politics involved in that, whereas the tripartite meetings chaired by the center's representative is to do with the political dialogue. To make the contrast clear, the SOO matter is dealt with by the Joint Secretary Northeast, Ministry of Home Affairs in Delhi. Whereas the talks, the tripartite talks, are chaired by the, initially the interlocutor, but latterly chaired by the center's representative. So, talks continued after 2022, and finally, we came to an agreement, at least, more than the entire group. The majority from SO groups were open to our political settlement within the state of Manipur by way of autonomous territorial council, which would be based on Article 371C, following modification constitutionally by the government, putting the matter in Parliament for discussion and ratification. And once modification of 371C was complete, then our autonomous territorial council would be based on that. The government did not want to use sixth schedule anymore because they felt it was not working very well in the states. Sixth schedule has been implemented. Now, sixth schedule was not extended to Manipur despite the fact that we are tribals because of various factors. And let's not go into that. But since Article 371C was already a part of the Manipur state creation, which was endorsed by the then President of India, V.V. Giri, but it fell short of expectations. And therefore, the idea of constitutional amendments to cover the loopholes and make it effective enough so that the autonomous council would be empowered with adequate devolution of power to function as autonomous territorial council within the state of Manipur. However, before that matter could be concluded officially, as we all know, on the 3rd of May 2023, violence that was not expected at all erupted and all hell broke loose. And let's not go into that matter in detail because everyone is aware of that. But the significant thing is, it became clear post 3rd May and the incidents that have continued till date that the state government of Manipur and the people, our neighbors, our long-term neighbors living in the valley, are not open to us having any kind of autonomy, which is why it is said that this problem broke out on the 3rd of May. However, for us, it became clear that we are not wanted by the valley people to be a part of the state of Manipur. And we being humans, and we also want to have our rights, and that too constitutionally, we had no choice but needed to come up with a separate demand, which was known as, or is known as, separate administration. So, as we all know, the elected members, first of all, in May itself, the latter part of May, submitted a memorandum to the Home Minister asking for a separate administration for our people, which was endorsed and supported by our civil society organizations. And SOO groups also then, in conjunction with elected members' demand and the CSOs, came to that point of submitting a proper demand for SA, and which in our talks in July and August became defined as Union Territory under Article 239A. So the political demand of UPF and KNO, necessarily because we are not wanted by the people in the valley of Manipur, for our own existence, decided to define separate administration as Union Territory, comprising our places. Now, that demand was formally submitted on the 1st of September. And thereafter, as we all know, there were elections in 5 states in the country, followed by the current parliamentary elections. Model code of conduct set in, and the government could not function, no longer has the right to function as before. So we all know 4th of June, the day after 4th of June, depending on the votes that have been cast, a new government will come in power, and they would be the one to resume our talks based on our political demands submitted on the 1st of September. In the meantime, we have to wait patiently for the new government to form. There's no way any government, there was no government anymore because the election code of conduct set in to carry out or continue our dialogue. So people are anxious. They are wondering what's going on since September last year, but I just explained what happened, although people know. And therefore, post 4th of June, when the government is formed and they find it appropriate, they will resume the talks. And then we would have a response on our political demand. And depending on what their response is, we will have to take it from there. Now, there is a view among us, some of our people who feel that since we are no longer a part of Manipur, they don't want us. The SOO suspension of operations should be only between the center and the SOO groups, which makes sense However, the fact of the matter is the origins of SOO is within Manipur, and the state government is signatory. And therefore, even though they in assembly, in the legislative assembly, decided to abrogate SOO for various reasons that they have pronounced, they cannot be left out according to the federal structure of the country. And the center obviously wants the state to be a part of the agreement. And in terms of the state not being a participant, can only happen following the dialogue based on our demand and the government's reaction and its settlement. And if we are granted our political demand, then naturally the state will no longer be a part of that. But as of now, it cannot, but the state has to be a part of it, even though they have a negative stance of abrogating SOO. But on SOO, another clarification required, which will help people understand better. The CSOs are usually extended in periods of 6 months or 1 year. Now, the last one was for 6 months, and it was due for extension on the 29th of February. So a week before that, the government intimated us of a meeting in regard to the extension of SOO on the 29th of February. So SO groups sent their representatives to Delhi as invited by the central government. And on the 29th, there was a meeting. The meeting was chaired by the additional secretary of MHA. However, the meeting did not conclude as it should in terms of extension, because the state, having abrogated SOO unilaterally, decided not to send a representative. And as far as we are concerned, we are ready to sign. The center wants to extend the SOO, therefore they invited us, we went. But since the arrangement is tripartite, it's a legal agreement, the center wanted the state to participate, and they asked us to wait a few days until they resolve the matter with the state government. However, election code of conduct had set in by then, and clearly the government could not engage in this matter. And we are in the mode of waiting until the government and the state sort it out. As far as the central government and us are concerned, there are no issues. At any rate, the SOO that was signed in 2005 with the army still stands on ground. And SOO, as I stated earlier, is strictly to do with ground rules. No firing, no killing. Neither the state should shoot us. If they do, they violate the ground rules. If we do, we violate the ground rules. That is all SOO is about. Tripartite talks are about the political aspect of our engagement, for which SOO was created. So those two should be compartmentalized, although they are linked. So today the topic is SOO, and the way one would look at it is, following the formation of a new government post 4th of June, at a time convenient to the government, they would work on extension of SOO if they choose to, or we can't say how they will function, but the dialogue will continue with the new government. So we can only wait and see how the new government will treat this matter. But as of now, SOO is in limbo as far as the state and the center are concerned, but as far as the center and the SOO groups are concerned, there's no problem, because we have demonstrated our willingness for extension as invited by the central government to Delhi. So the matter has to be sorted out between the center and the state. So for people who think that SOO should be abrogated by us also, it is not required, because we have to know that the center is in charge. they are the ones who decide what happens. The state is part of the federal structure. They also have their right, but their rights are confined to the state, and what they wish to do, they do. And as far as the SO are concerned, we are engaged in this SO arrangement, and we have, as I said, demonstrated our willingness for its extension. Now, some people say that, as mentioned earlier, since the state do not want us to be a part of Manipur anymore, and they have chased us out of the valley, and there is a clear demarcation of the two communities, our only hope is to find a settlement within the Constitution of India, which is in process. And in the meantime, of course, to illustrate the matter, we call Lamka now. We don't go by Churachandpur. Kangpokpi is now Kangui. Be that as it may, officially, it's still Churachandpur and Kangpokpi. And that will not change officially until the political settlement comes to place. So our job now is to focus on the political settlement which we are engaged in, and we need to work at that. We have to be persistent and patient, and our objective is related to our existence. We need constitutional safeguards, primarily not for development, but for our existence and our security. And that being the basis, development can come later. And for that security, we need the constitutional safeguards by way of union territory, which is constitutional. Now, people of the valley might not want us to be a part of Manipur, but we do not harbor any kind of ill will to them in terms of once our political settlement is there, we will work at being good neighbors. We want to coexist with our neighbors, irrespective of which community. And that is the right thing to do for us because we are within the same country and we need not be antagonistic towards any community or government, whether center or state. We only hope that the central government will, in the near future, look at our plight. There are IDPs, about 50,000 plus maybe, who are homeless. Our government employees are not able to work anymore in Imphal because there's an existential crisis. And we are not receiving funds from the state, which is due to us while others are getting. And we are surviving on root, literally. And I don't know how long the government will stand and watch our people suffer like this, especially when we are citizens of the country. So the government, I expect, will be accountable because we are a democracy and the largest in the world for that. And whichever government comes to power will consider the needs of its citizens, not only ours, but also other communities. And once that is established, we will work towards restoring a relationship with all our neighbors so that coexistence occurs on a platform where we are at par with one another so that we don't create a situation by being inferior or lesser, which could attract all kinds of, hatred or physical abuse of various types. And we feel the only way there can be peaceful coexistence is when we also have the same constitutional legitimacy other communities enjoy. So that's the realistic view. And we hope to see better days, not only for us, but for all our neighbors sooner rather than later.
Thank you for the insightful updates. Moving on to my next question. There are some voices amongst our community who insist that SUL needs to be repealed. They also request the SO groups should also nullify the agreement signed in 2008 and only then issue an official statement of accepting political dialogue regarding separate administration. You being the spokesperson of the KNO, that is Kuki National Organization, how do you respond to such kind of statements?
I appreciate the sentiment of that line of thought. However, we need to be rational. We have to realize our realistic position. We are a Christian minority tribal people, even in the context of the state of Manipur, let alone India, in the 1.4 billion people, And in the earlier part of the interview, I mentioned a few things, or perhaps I should say alluded to, since we need to repeat it, that this SOO talks is it's a hard-earned privilege, which were denied us since India's independence. For the first time in 2016, we were given a platform for our voice to be heard. And that was why SOO was signed. And as I mentioned to you, despite the fact that SOO was signed in 2008, for the next 8 years, various forces were at work to prevent any kind of dialogue taking place. And now, post 4th of June, a new dispensation is going to come in power at the center. Can we afford to lose the platform that we achieved after 70 years for the first time since India's independence because we are sentimental about it? I hope people don't take offense to that, because if you are rational, or I would like to know one reason or two why we should abrogate or dissolve this existing SOO arrangement where talks is ongoing and is yet to be completed, and it'll only complete after the new government comes to place. Why would we lose this opportunity? Let's say we lose it. What confidence do we have that the government will take up our issues ever again? Is there any guarantee that because we have suffered a lot for the last 70 years, and especially, for the last 70 years till 3rd of May 2023, what we suffered was in terms of political rights being not given to us and other economic and social deprivations? Yes. But then 3rd of May, that earlier forms of deprivations, maybe we can term this as symbolic. Injustice was done to us is what we feel. However, 3rd of May onwards, it became physical. We were cleansed out of the valley where we've been staying for generations. And this situation with the valley people, we have to keep notice, it's happened for the first time in history. And the reason clearly is because we are being denied the political rights that we demand. And they have their reasons for it. I respect them for that. But for us, our reasons is existential. We cannot live in the valley anymore. We were killed. We were cleansed out. And just to mention a very important factor, not trying to gain the moral high ground or anything, when the population transfer happened in Churachandpur, in Kangkokpi, in Moreh, our people, especially the women folks, were there to protect the valley community so that they can exit safely. However, in Imphal, totally contrary to what was happening in the hills, we were killed. We were prevented from going to our, respective districts. We were blockaded. We were shot at. We were killed. We were pulled down. The whole sort of thing. So there's a stark difference in the attitude of us towards those who were being transferred from Churachandpur, Moreh, and Kangkokpi. Conversely, The very opposite was happening to us. They simply want to annihilate us. I don't say all of them, but the radical elements who have gained so much prominence in the state of Manipur. So our future can only be secure. It's a bit like the Israelites, never again. We don't want to be exterminated as happened on the 3rd of May and the following days. We are going to prevent that at all costs. We don't mean any harm to anybody, but we will protect our people ourselves. And the best way to do that is through constitutional safeguards. That's why we need this political dialogue to come to its logical conclusion. So while this process is going on, what has happened from September 1st till now is not an interruption. It's purely a systematical events in the country in terms of administration. The government cannot deal with us when there's just a few months left with parliamentary elections coming. So the obvious arrangement will happen after 4th of June, and which is just 3 days away from now or 2 days away. So on what basis, what confidence do we have that we should relinquish this present arrangement in the hope that the new government will take up our issues? There's no guarantee. So we have to hang on to this because it's in process. Our demands have been submitted. The government has to respond. And thereon, if they give us, the logical events will take place. If they don't give us, the dialogue will continue, negotiations will continue, because we are not anti-nationals, we are citizens of India asking for our constitutional rights. And that may take some time, and that process has already started. And why should we, although the state government of Manipur wants to abrogate SOO, although it's not a political situation, it impacts anyway, and it's disoriented a lot of our people significantly to the point of thinking that SOO has not been extended. The government of India hasn't said that SOO is not extended. It has kept it on hold until they work on the state government for them to oblige. That's between the center and state. We are for extension as the center is, so we are okay. And as I said, that SOO is to do with ground rules, not with the political aspect, although the two are interrelated. Now, we are on the right side of things, not claiming the moral high ground again, but that is the the events that have taken place. And we cannot risk losing this now because of our sentiments, which is very high, including mine, where we want to separate from the state, and therefore SOOs should be signed between the center and state SOOs only. Those are emotional reactions and perfectly understandable. However, we need to be rational and focused. SOO arrangement and the political dialogue, which is ongoing, is a very hard-earned platform. Giving that up now because of our right but sentimental reasons, I don't mean anything negative by terming it sentimental. Sentiment is a very valid emotions, but political dialogue is beyond emotions. It's about our political future, our security, and development to follow. So my response is, if we give this up, as some people say, where is the guarantee that the new government will take up our issues? If they just keep it in abeyance or quiet about it, what can we do? The state is against us. And a lot of different people at power in the country may, for one reason or the other, be against our community being accorded a political status such as union territory, because the reasoning would be then other communities will start demanding, notwithstanding the fact that our situation is unique. Such a thing has not happened anywhere, whether it's the Bodos or the Garbis or anyone else. Bodos were in conflict with the Assamese, but there was no ethnic cleansing as ours. we want to be a part of Manipur and we signed for territorial council within the state of Manipur. They destroyed that. They chased us out. They didn't want to give us that. So what do? We can't hang around as IDPs for the unknown future. We have, as citizens of India, the right to make our political demands, provided it is ideologically not contradictory to the Constitution of India, which we respect. So for those who think that we should give this up, I hope my explanation will make sense to them, and they are entitled to their opinions. I don't criticize them for that. However, that is my response. As long as the people are clear about the distinction between SOO and the tripartite political dialogue, that SOO refers to ground rules. There should be no politics in that. It's about how security forces should behave towards us and we towards them. And unfortunately, as we know from the 3rd of May, the state forces violated the ground rules by leading, the radical elements in the valley to attack our villages, kill us, etc. But what to do? We were not in a position to prevent that kind of thing. That was the responsibility of the state government, and they, for whatever reasons, under their noses, this happened. So that is SO nevertheless. But the political dialogue is ongoing. We have to be patient and we have to be supportive collectively for the common goal. Our common goal is constitutional safeguards by way of union territory. After all, when you say SA, separate administration, according to the Constitution of India, there are only two options. You have either UT or state. We are not ready for a statehood, but UT to be administered, governed directly by the center as other UT states, UT, places such as, I don't know which other UT state, Pondicherry is one of them. Leh Ladakh is the other. Delhi is the other. This is important for us, as I mentioned earlier, because security is foremost for us. We have security, then we'll coexist peacefully with our neighbors. And the constitutional legitimacy that will be accorded us through UT is something very rational and sensible because it's constitutional. It's not against the country or the people of Manipur. They didn't want us, so they should at least not oppose our right to constitutional safeguards, which we're asking. So that is very important for us to be clear that we mean no offense to anybody, but we have the right to protect ourselves. And we need to have constitutional legitimacy through union territory so that our people will be safe. And once you're safe, you will be well disposed to be at peace with others, as others we hope will be towards us. So those would be my remarks, in relation to the topic that we've discussed today. But we need perseverance, we need to be patient. We must bear no ill will towards other communities. We must work at coexistence, and coexistence observing our, or how should I put it, of being mindful of what is required for us to coexist with our neighbors. We need that constitutional safeguard, and at this point, we have expressed that as union territory under Article 239A. So let's stick with that.